Time and time again, I have seen so many people, especially beginners, want to get into property, want to buy some property, want to create ownership long term, but they start off with the strategies like dual sourcing. You've maybe doing a simple buy to let, rent to rent. For me, these are kind of the low hanging fruits, rent to rent and dual sourcing specifically. And I want to just share a perspective, right? My reality. I was once upon a time a beginner, right? Today, I have raised over £3 million in private finance. I have built a £4 million portfolio within 3 years. And when I started, obviously there's all these noise of like different strategies, the dual sourcing, the rent to rents, simple buy to lets to get started, just do something just to get started, right? But ultimately, like, just think about it. When I got presented the opportunity to kind of do dual sourcing, I kind of, my background, just give more context as well. My background was an engineer. I came from an engineering background. I just studied engineering, finished a master's, started to work in the corporate world in an engineering company. So I'm very like analytical, and I like to look at the data, I look at numbers, and I want to just understand things. If it logically makes sense in my mind, I'm going to run with it all the way. And when dual sourcing was something that got presented to myself as a way to kind of build the capital to be able to start buying property, I just realized, well, like, let's just think about this logically. So I already have a 9 to 5, which is taking up all my day time to be able to deliver on that, right? And I have to do this other thing where I've got to go find investors, find properties, and source them and get a sourcing fee. And so in essence, create like another business on the side, which for me, like, I just didn't see how that could amount to any amount of money in a very short space of time. And I guess for me, being impatient, I didn't want to spend the next 2-3 years trying to build the capital up to be able to start buying property. Because of course, if you did do deal sourcing on a part-time level and you weren't even as good, and maybe you source, I don't know, a couple of properties a year, you might make 10 grand extra. But again, if you do the maths on that, right, how long would it take for you to buy a property? Like, it's a very long winded game. It might even be 5 years before you buy your one property. And it's not really scalable unless you go full time with this. So if you're full time doing dual sourcing and that's the only thing you're doing, well, one, you've got to be great at the skill, right? If you're great at the skill, even if you are sourcing one a month, let's say you're making 5 grand a month, let's say, for example, 5 times 12 is 60, so £60,000. Obviously pay your taxes on that, don't know what's left over. Whatever's left, let's assume is 40k, for example. That's what you saved in year one. You've got to maybe get 2 years, 3 years of that to really get something substantial enough to be able to start buying property at a good level. And again, for me, I just saw that as a very slow-winded way to be able to do it. Like, in my opinion, I would just rather just focus on my career, climb the corporate ladder, increase my income in my career, and probably have a similar outcome, i.e. being able to buy a property every 3 years. If I want to accelerate that, there's got to be another way, right? Then let's talk about rent to rent. Rent to rent, again, didn't make sense to me. Like, I have a full-time job. I'm going to make an extra £500 like a month. Yeah, I can scale that, get multiple rent to rents, right? But the reality is, when you actually look at the business, when you look at the numbers, if I'm having to sink 5 grand into the property for every single deal that I do, right? That means that even if I made £500 profit, maybe that's too low. Let's say it's £1,000 profit, right? And I've sunk 5k into this property. It means that I've got to get this property making me money. And let's assume that the whole year I did make money. And in most cases, that isn't the case. You have voids, and if you're doing short-term rentals, seasonal business. So you're not always going to see the same level of profits. So let's say I did make an average £1,000 a month, just to keep it simple, right? That would mean by month 5, I would have gained back my initial 5 grand. And then month 6 is where I can start to see profit from this property. So let's say 7 months, I make a grand profit each. That's only an additional 7 grand. And I'm saying only because 7 grand isn't going to help me get property like in the next year or two. Like, how many of these have I got to do, right? And you've got to start adding numbers, right? And this business requires time to be able to manage. People want to talk about systems and processes in place. Like, unless you've got like 10 properties, like a large portfolio basically of these rent to rent, you are in a middleman business. You trying to outsource this is just eating into your margins. So you're doing something to then give away the profits. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Again, it's like, just like the whole thing, I was trying to make sense of it, just didn't sit right with me. I just didn't understand it. I had no ownership. And I'm like, why would I spend the next 2 years, 3 years of my life trying to build this thing up just to try and build capital and not still be owning any property? So it became very clear, like, these strategies weren't going to fix the problem. Yes, they can over a long horizon, but like, if you're trying to fix the problem and the constraint is you want to do it in the next year or even next 6 months or next few months and buy a property, you've got to look at other things, right? And that's where I came across raising capital. I saw people go out there and provide value to people who had money sat in the bank account doing nothing and provide them a great return on the money and be able to take that money and go and start buying property today. And that was the only thing that I heard that made sense to me. I was like, this absolutely makes so much sense. I can buy a property right now. I can literally scale raising capital. I can raise millions of pounds. And that's what I want them to do. I just thought, yeah, if I can raise 50 grand, 100 grand, you know, someone argue I ain't with the network. I didn't have the network either. I'm not like this silver spoon kid who just managed to find rich people who just willing to give me money. I, first of all, went and invested in my education. I went and spent all my hard-earned money that I was earning. I realized, well, if I can acquire skills, I could be more valuable in the marketplace. The skills I acquired are very simply: property investing, learn how to invest in property simply, and how to raise capital. Those are the 2 skills I acquired. That skill has now built me £4 million or 4.5 even, £4.5 million portfolio in property. It's allowed me to be able to buy property from the start and raise money from the start without having to do these lesser strategies like rent to rents and deal sourcing, or even the simple buy to lets. Because again, I understood the simple buy to lets. Cash flow wise, I'm making £200-300 per property. Like, that isn't what I was in it for. I was at the time making £5 grand a month from work, right? If I want to replace my income, I need a strategy that at least provides me £1,000, £1,005 per property, right? So it was never going to fly. Like, it just wasn't going to be as non-stop. Like, if I wanted to do that strategy, I need like 20 properties to replace my income. That just sounded like way too much, and it just didn't make sense. It made me feel like I was being a busy fool by having to amass 20 properties to have the outcome. Like, what strategy? There must be a better strategy where I can acquire asset which high cash flow and get me to my outcome a lot faster. And that I saw as buy, refurbish, refinance houses of multiple occupants, which is BRHMO when you kind of simplify it. So that is a strategy I went into, and I realized, yeah, this is definitely something I can go and see myself doing, and more importantly, gets me my outcome, which is ownership and high cash flow. This is something that I can pass on. It's going to allow me to gain the freedom back because I actually own this asset, I actually make money from this asset at a good level, and I can scale this through raising capital. So I haven't got to look at trying to earn or save my way there, because again, another thing I understood is I can't save or earn my way as fast as I could raise the money. So for me, it's a no-brainer at that point. Everything just clicked. This is the thing I've got to go and learn and master and understand who I need to become to be able to raise that level of money. If I want to raise £100,000, who do I need to become to be able to raise £100,000? If you haven't got the network, how can you upgrade your network? What can you do to be able to be in a position where you can attract £100,000? These were the things I started to solve for, because getting back to my original point, right? I'm an engineer. My background is like, how can I think from a solution-oriented mindset? I don't want to limit myself based on my current circumstances and what I think is like possible. If I've seen someone go and raise millions of pounds, I'm not going to be envious of them that they've raised millions of pounds, right? I'm going to understand, what did that person do? How did they become the person that was able to raise hundreds of thousands of pounds, millions of pounds? Like, what have they done? Understand that thing and try to learn that thing and then implement it to see the same outcome. I'm a big believer. I'm not here to try and reinvent the wheel. I just literally want to replicate what's been proven to work. If it's been proven to work, I just want to literally copy and paste, because I want the outcome that someone's achieved. And therefore, to do that, I need to replicate and literally do the thing that it did. It's as simple as that, right? And so I want to encourage you to kind of think outside the box and just don't get sold on this like thing of, oh, let's go build a rent-to-rent portfolio and we can start buying properties. Like, just do the maths. It just, the only people that I've known to do well rent-to-rent and even still haven't really started to buy a property, and they've been years, like 5 years, 4 years in the business, right? It's taking them that long to buy 1 or 2 properties. For that level of time invested, you could be much further ahead. Me compared to someone that did rent-to-rent, I'm miles ahead of someone that's done rent-to-rent, respectfully, like, because I've acquired assets. Those assets have appreciated. Those assets provide me income from day one. Like, for me, it's just a no-brainer. Like, all these other things that are just here, like, oh, do lease options to get into property. Lease options aren't scalable. You can't scale a lease option. It's not a strategy that's scalable. You might be able to find the property, yeah, maybe where the landlord is maybe not eager to sell, probably wants to wait a bit and maybe get a bit more for their money, so you can do a lease option agreement. But that isn't like a thing you go to every single property and try to offer a lease option with. It's just, we're going to struggle. If you did that, you probably might never even do a lease option though. We might do 1 a year. Again, I'm not in the game of doing 1 a year, right? It's not a scalable plan. So these are the things that I was thinking about and assessing them. How can I do the thing I want to do today? Which for me was very simply high cash flow property ownership, and in essence create something that is generational and has financial freedom element to it. And so raising finance was the key to allow me to get started. Yes, as a beginner, I was able to raise hundreds of thousands of pounds to do my first deal. I had no experience. All I had was knowledge and time. I knew exactly what to do. I had the team to be able to go out there and execute. And again, you might be sitting in your shoes right and saying, thinking Alfred's easy to say, right? But like, I'm just telling you my reality, right? And you can be that person that chooses to believe that if one man can, so can I, or be that person that says, oh, Alfred, you got lucky. Up to you, right? But I'm not the only person that's been able to do that, right? There's people that I've taught myself, people that even I saw before me even starting this, who did the same thing. And I had that belief that, well, if they can, so can I. So I'm going to learn what it is they've learned and do this thing that has allowed them to achieve the success they have today, right? So look, ultimately, I'm just trying to share with you, like, you don't have to be looking at dual sourcing. You don't have to be doing rent to rents. I have so many students who've come through to kind of learn from myself, who spent 2-3 years and kind of regretted just wasting a lot of time and no real financial gain. Like, some of them just about broke even. Some of them lost money on rent to rent deals. And it was like, they just wish it just never started that. Because ultimately, like, if you're not doing this full time and you're not finding a way to systemize and not scaling at a rapid pace for you to have to even systemize, chances are you're just making marginal gains. And the capital from those gains aren't going to be enough to have to start buying property at scale. It's just, like I said, you're going to raise money faster than you can ever earn it. And again, it's proven time and time again. Corporations don't try and earn their way to buy assets. They raise the money to buy the assets. The assets then perform, which then makes them money to be able to pay back their investors. And now they have the asset retained and provide them cash flow. That is the game. Like, stop trying to look at individuals. Let's not even listen to me. Go and look at corporations. How do corporations build their wealth? They borrow money all the time because they just have to know how to allocate money correctly to make more money from it and therefore be able to pay their investors back. So it's like, hey, thank you for borrowing me the money. Here's your return on your money. I now have this asset. I have this thing that performs for me. And that's how they're scaling so rapidly. So, like, you don't have to listen to me. Look at the data. I'm not here to, I'm just my opinion, I guess, but like, numbers don't lie. Back to my engineering, like, I'm a data person. I've always looked at data to make decisions. Like, the data staring me in my face, showing me that I can do something in a much more efficient way, in a much better way. I'm going to go with that. I'm not going to just listen to the low hanging fruit and try and get sold on something that is like, again, if it was easy, right, everyone would be doing it. And I guess there's another reason why people maybe don't go down the route of raising finance, because it's not the easiest things, but it's a skill that can be acquired and allow you to get there if you work on it long enough. Because people that want to get quick win and or want to just do some dual sourcing, you might spend 3 years. Even if it took you 3 months, 4 months, 6 years, even took you 12 months to learn how to raise your first £100,000, you've definitely acquired a skill and a skill more valuable than ever doing a dual sourcing or a rent to rent, or like is the case, and it's factual. So anyways, I've said a lot, but I hope that all makes sense to yourselves. But I wanted to share this because I keep seeing a lot of people who are wanting to get into property and are falling short of these lesser strategies and are in essence wasting time and realizing in 2 years, 3 years down the line where they've lost money or they've just about broken even and just realized they should just maybe even just career and just, I don't know, whatever. But like, they just didn't have a way, right? And maybe they weren't exposed to this, so they didn't know it was possible to do it this way. But I'm here, I'm testament of that. So are my students who've done this several times over. Combined, I've taught people how to raise millions of pounds combined. So if you want to learn the skill of raising capital, or you're interested in BRH, I've left a link in the description for you to be able to reach out to myself, to my team, to see how we can work one-to-one on this to allow you to be able to get started with buying property today rather than in 10 years, 5 years time. So that's it from me. Take care and see you in the next video.